Hi, my name is John Femia. Some of you may remember me from the good old show Square Pegs, where I played Screech. Marshall, class clown. The funny thing is, I wasn't even due to read for Square Pegs. I actually auditioned for something right across the hall, and I came out of the audition, and who was standing there but Eve Branstein. Eve, I knew from when she cast me in the show Hello, Larry. So she remembered me, and it was, nice to see her. And she asked me when I would be reading for Square Pegs, and I said, I'm not. And that just kind of like blew her mind because she was amazed I hadn't found out about it. So she immediately grabbed my arm and brought me into the room where everybody was reading, and that's where I met Anne for the first time. And thus began the odyssey of the Ballad of Square Pegs. I originally read for the part of Johnny Slash and gotten the role, actually. And then a few days later, they did some auditions in LA, and I think they found Merritt like totally by accident. And Merritt read for the part, and obviously there was no greater choice for the role than Merritt, because Merritt actually brought some dimensions to the character that would not have been possible with me. So I thought I was out of a job. And then they said, well, we want to give you the part of Marshall, because we don't think the kid who played Marshall was right for it. And got the role of Marshall. Now, my recollection of the first readings and rehearsals with Marshall was that Marshall was supposed to be a 12-year-old computer genius, very similar to that kid in Revenge of the Nerds who was just too young to be in high school. And I think they were going to base Marshall on that. I mean, even though that movie didn't come out till a year later. But when we did some shoots with it, I don't think it was mixing very well. I was summoned to the Chateau Marmont, where Anne had been residing, and I think Kim Friedman was there, our director, and Eve Branstein was there as well. And I pretty much thought I was walking to an execution, because I thought they were going to write Marshall out of the script, which was their original intention. It's just that my character wasn't working with everyone else's. So they had asked me if there was anything that I could possibly add to it. And I immediately said, well, this is a show about high school. I just find it weird that you guys don't have like a class clown type. And light bulbs automatically went off in everybody's head, and they were like, yeah, class clown, that's great. So there was this one joke I remember written in the script. If you had one green ball in this hand and another green ball in this hand, what do you have? You have Kermit the Frog's undivided attention. And that was a cute, bad joke that just did not work under the original Marshall character. So I kind of added some, schmaltzy stand-up comic elements and started doing this with my hands. A lot of it was based on Bill Murray's character from Saturday Night Live, Nick the Lounge Singer, when he would, sing these really bad songs karaoke style and then go, hey, Levy, you're beautiful. Okay, that's exactly where I took that from. And started saying little things like that, and more it started to come together. So when we did the pilot episode, Marshall was the perfect accompaniment for Johnny's neuroses, because Marshall was just into his own little world of shtick and bad jokes and fake vomit, and Johnny was, into his Walkman and the whole new wave scene and a totally different head. So together it worked out pretty well. Cafeteria line, well, I mean, come on, Rosanna, without saying. And, putting on a Rosanna wig and tight skirt on your 16th birthday is not something that I recommend for anybody, watching this at home. Don't try it at home. At first, I don't think I identified with the character at all. And then when we changed into Class Clown, then yeah, there were many elements that I took from my life that was able to make Marshall, fairly real in his nerdiness. But yeah, I was able to identify with the character because, well, first of all, this was the second time in my life that I was taken away from my home environment, because I was always a New Yorker and still am to this day. And this was the second time I was brought away from my environment into a completely different environment where I had no friends, really no one I could relate to. And the second time around, it wasn't as hard as the first. But I found that there really wasn't anybody that I could really be friends with, because there was really nothing I had in common with anyone. And I couldn't really be friends with the girls because, you know, I wasn't into the Cat soundtrack. But I really had no one except myself and Marshall. So basically, Marshall became not only my alter ego, but to the point of overt schizophrenia, he became the person that I confided in. And that kind of made Marshall a little more multidimensional. So that was a good thing. So I know Merritt had difficulty at first carpooling. But I think as far as we were concerned, since we all lived in the same complex, you know, we all got together and went in one of the cars and came back afterwards. And then I think as time went on and the more time we spent with each other, the sicker we got of each other, so we wound up going off on our own. We shot the thing in Norwalk, which was kind of like, you know, the Bayonne of California. There was really nothing but, you know, industrial plants. And I remember sometimes when the wind was in the wrong direction, there was like this horrible, like rotten cereal smell that would fill the air. And that, I think, was probably the hardest to take. That and the fact that we were in this abandoned school where they filmed Grease 2, I believe. I think it was called Excelsior High School. You know, the inside of it was kind of like, you know, Dodge City, because it was like completely abandoned and there's nothing but really shrapnel and old school desks and stuff like that. On the one hand, it's like I can ride the subway and no one really knows who I am, which I like very much. But then I'll go into like a comedy club and people will see me walk in and they'll be like, where have we seen him from? Oh yeah, Screech. Yeah, no, not Screech. But in fact, like Leonard Nimoy, I'm pushing a book around. It's called I Am Not Screech. It's in paperback, coming out soon. One of the major ways that being on Square Pegs has benefited me, you know, not just doing the stand-up comedy thing, although I was lucky enough to produce a couple of shows for the New York Underground Comedy Festival and got to be friends with some good comics as a result and had some great experiences. But a couple of years ago, I did this off-Broadway play at the Manhattan Theater Source here in the city. And the people who had heard about the play, who flocked to it because I was the lead, were all Square Pegs fans. And it was just amazing that, you know, they cared enough to stay around after the show and say, wow, man, your performance was great, but God, man, I really loved you as Marshall. And that always warms the cockles of my heart. One thing I have to say about Sarah is that I really admire how far she's come in the business. And also, she's worked hard for every little bit of it. I mean, she was working off-Broadway from as far back as when she was, you know, a little kid. And I had actually known her before Square Pegs because she and I went to professional children's school. And at that time, she was working very hard doing theater and off-Broadway and singing her heart out. So it's just really nice to know that all her hard work has finally paid off. And she's now the phenomenon that she is. What's she doing now? Does anybody know? One of my regrets about not going another season was that we didn't really have the time to, you know, bond together in the way that we should have. I mean, you would think that 1 year would be enough time to do that, but it wasn't because, I mean, we were always working and the schedules were so grueling for us that we really didn't take as much time as we should have to, you know, enjoy each other's company.